and welcome to the webinar series by Edge. This session is called What Nutrition Can Teach Us About Investing. The session will help establish the similarities between two important life skills, nutrition and investing, with a refreshing perspective. Coming from Mihir's personal experiences and practical examples, the session will change the way you view food and investments. It'll bust some myths, clear age old misconceptions, and dissect fads and trends around investing and nutrition. Well, all of you joining in, welcome. I hope you're well seated, you know, uh, have taken good care about everything around you, and you're focusing out here because we're going to have an amazing session coming in. What will this session cover? Insights for better investing and health, better understanding of the trends that govern the capital market, and fresh perspective on investing and nutrition as core life skills for everyone to learn about. I have with me Mihir, who is the co-founder of Multiply, an upcoming social network for investors and also an Edge member. Prior to Multiply, Mihir spent about 15 years with organizations like Deloitte, BAML, JM Financials, and CVK Advisors. He is a chartered accountant, a CFA, FRM, and MBA from University of Oxford. With a passion for investing professionally and nutrition on personal side, he is constantly looking for opportunities to merge the two. Let me also tell you, Mihir is a college senior of mine from R.A. Bodhar College. A bit of a house note for attendees on Zoom, please type your questions in the Q&A panel on your screen below. And I'm now going to ask Mihir to join us. Over to you, Mihir.
I was 30 when I had to deal with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, hypertension issues. My body weight had shot up to around 85 kilos, much more than ideal. It was then that I discovered nutrition and realized my passion for it. I was blown away by the fact that principles of nutrition were almost exactly mirroring those of investing. So here's a small example. We all know that periodic small investments compound wealth over the long term. Similarly, small habits like cutting down sugar compound your health over the long term. Crash diets have made us lose weight, but it's tough to sustain that. Similarly, stock tips have made us money, but it's tough to create wealth with that. We'll cover a lot of such examples as we move on. I realized that these two core life skills are not taught in any curriculum in a structured way. So I began distilling things down to their absolute basics. I started teaching my 6-year-old daughter the importance of health and wealth both, something which I wish I knew in my younger days. I want to acknowledge Jitendra Choksi, JC of Fitter, for teaching me everything I know about nutrition and fitness. So let's get started. I will first explore nutrition in a structured approach, and then we'll begin exploring investing with a similar approach. So let's start with step one, which is understanding food and nutrients. So there are three macronutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Carbohydrates provide us energy. The sources include grains, fruits, dairy products, etc. Proteins are the building blocks of our muscles. Fat is the transport mechanism of vitamins across the body. Now, this is not to be confused with body fat. Body fat is completely different from dietary fat. Each of these macronutrients can be measured in grams. So every food can be broken down into what we call it CPF profile, which is the carb, protein, and fat profile. If you take the example of a bread, a slice of bread has 6 gram carbs, 1 gram protein, zero point 0.5 grams fat. Similar with an apple, you can see the CPF profile on the screen. Same with a chicken breast. Okay. How do we find this? We simply Google or read the nutrition label. Now, calories is a measurement of energy that food provides us with. 1 gram of protein equals 4 calories, 1 gram of carb again equals 4 calories, and 1 gram of fat equals 9 calories. So for any food item, you can arrive at its calorie measurement by using the simple equation, which is 4P plus 4C plus 9S, which is what I have done on the slide. As you can see, a slice of bread has 32 calories, an apple 88, and 100 grams chicken breast 150. Our body needs fuel, and that fuel is food. Food contains calories. So the question now is, how much fuel do we really need? That's where your BMR or your basal metabolic rate comes in. BMR is the minimum number of calories you need to remain healthy. If you eat below your BMR, you are consuming way less than what you need, and that's going to affect your immunity. Now, how do we calculate BMR? Again, we go online, there are lots of calculators. All you need to do is input your age, weight, body measurements, etc., and you will come at a number. Typically, a BMR is in the range of 1300 to 1600 calories. Let's look at another metric, which is known as the TEE, or the total energy expenditure. Our body requires energy to function, and TEE measures how many calories are burnt by our body in a day. Just sitting without any activity burns calories because, of course, we are alive, we are breathing, the body is doing its activity. I'm speaking with you, that is burning calories. Activities such as moving around, walking, climbing, 10,000 steps, all of these burn more calories, of course, than just sitting around. Resistance training, which is gyms and weights, consumes even more calories. So the bottom line is, if you have a sedentary lifestyle, your TEE will be lower. If you have an active lifestyle, your TEE will be higher. Again, there are loads of calculators online available to compute your TEE. Now let's look at the basic tenet of fitness. Excess calories means you will gain weight, and a calorie deficit means you will lose weight. Look at it this way. If your income exceeds your expenses, you gain wealth. If your ingested calories exceed your expended calories, you gain weight. It's that simple. So let's take this example. Let's say my BMR is 1500 and my TE is 2200. If I consume 1700 calories in a day, I am creating a deficit of 2200 minus 1700, which is 500. And over time, this deficit of 500 daily is going to get me to my ideal body weight and help me be fit. On the other hand, if I consume 2500 calories, I am creating a calorie excess of 300, and that's just going to add to my weight. If I consume 1200, which is lower than my BMR, of course, I'm going to lose weight because I'm consuming 1200 and burning 2200. But that's below my BMR, and I'm doing a real disservice to myself and potentially losing my immunity. Now, if you want to eat more and still not gain weight, the mathematical answer to that is increase your TE, and the way to increase your TE is just add some activity to your schedule. Now we have figured out how many calories one should be eating. So naturally, the next step is what should be the composition of these calories, because calories come from three sources, as we have seen: carb, protein, and fat. This is where we dissect all kinds of diet plans. Diet plans are nothing but compositions of C, P, and F. For example, a keto, very popular. I'm sure all of you have heard about this. A keto diet plan is a plan where less than 5% calories come from carb, 35% from protein, and 60% from fat. On the other hand, a low carb diet is where 25% of your calories come from carb, 35 protein, and 40 fat. There's a variant of this called the low protein diet, more suited for people who have issues with kidney or who have things like gout, etc. The bottom line here is all diet plans work purely because they create a calorie deficit. Everything else is just a wrapper on top, or it's just a marketing gimmick, or it's just a story. None of these are magic. So don't believe someone blindly when they say that, oh, you want to lose weight, just stop eating carbs. Okay. You will still gain weight if you exceed your TE calories by eating just protein and fat. Another very popular one is don't eat egg yellow, it has cholesterol. Yes, it does have cholesterol, but no, it won't harm you if you're eating it within the stipulated quantity. So excess of anything is bad, but demonizing a particular food or making a particular food a sort of hero is also wrong. So there is no one size fits all formula as far as diets are concerned. So you could pick anything that you like, whether a keto, whether a low carb, whether a low protein. What is important is to stick to it. Let us distill this down to two equations, which actually would fit all sizes. The first equation is the total calories, which you can see on screen: 4p plus 4p plus 9f equal to 1700. And why 1700? Because that's between my BMR and TE. And the second is the proportion. So I am looking at a 4c is to 4p is to 9f of 25 is to 35 is to 40, because I am constructing a low carb plan. Now, what does all this mean? Let's take a practical example. What you see on screen is my daily diet plan. This is a simple spreadsheet. I have just put in whatever items I eat on a daily basis into its CP and F profile. And the last column of total calories is the 4C plus 4P plus 9F. If you look at the bottom, against my target of 1700, I am consuming 1687. Against my target composition of 25, 35, 40, I have come to a 26, 30, and 44. And that is fine. Minor deviations won't do you any disservice. What will do you a disservice is switching from one plan to the other continuously. If you look at my dinner, it says chicken 250 grams. Does this mean I just eat boiled chicken? The answer is no. You can also see oil in there. So I have calculated the calories that oil would require for me to be able to cook chicken in any manner. I can cook it in the gravy. I can have some salad on the side. So most veggies like tomatoes, capsicum, even potato for that matter, have negligible calories. So you can just ignore their count. Remember, this is only 1700 calories. My TE is 2200. So I have a margin of safety of 500. And no amount of veggies that I eat are going to push me across that barrier of 5. I drink adequate water, 4 or 5 liters a day. I also try to get adequate sleep, which these days has not been true because we are in the launch phase of our startup. That's taking up most of my time. Now you will wonder, I'm talking about consistency and I'm talking about discipline, and I have this diet plan in a spreadsheet. So does this mean I just eat this on a daily basis? Again, no. I have created some recipe blocks. So as a sample, I'm showing two on screen. Whenever I get bored of eating chicken and bakri for dinner, I just replace it with fish curry rice. So a recipe block is nothing but a CPF profile. I just copy paste this into the spreadsheet and just ensure that my equation at the bottom is tallying. Okay. I know what you're thinking. Who has the time to plan so much? Who's going to sit around with a weighing scale and measure everything that you eat? So here's a fresh perspective on it. Do you know your bank balance? Do you know the inflows in your bank account in the last month or the outflows at the same time? Most probably, yes, right? This comes naturally to most of us. Start thinking of your body as a bank. Okay? The inflows are the calories consumed, and the outflows is your TE. You don't need to measure everything every time. In mere 4 or 5 days, you will realize that a particular katori in your house has 50 grams of rice. So the next time you want to eat 75 grams rice, you just have 1.5 katoris of rice. Okay? Stop putting oil, ghee, etc. directly from the bottle into the pan. Put it onto a spoon first and then put it onto the pan. So you have to start standardizing things and reduce approximation. All this looks really complex, but believe me, it is extremely simple. And when you see the results of this, you will realize that this knowledge was a value buy hiding in plain sight. Let's take a look at some things which are usual suspects and pitfalls. Biscuits, these are laden with sugar. You'll be surprised to know that calorie wise, a hide and seek has the same calories as a nutri-digestive biscuit. Diet snacks, I think we are all guilty of this. We have our diet khakras, diet chivdas, diet bhel, oven fried snacks, non-fried snacks, and whatnot. If you carefully read the nutrition label and try to fit these in your CPF profile, you'll be surprised. Home food. One cannot say that home food is healthy without measuring the CPF profile. Of course, it is healthier than outside food, but unless it is CPF measured, you cannot say it's healthy or non-healthy. Health drinks. This is something I avoid giving to my daughter. Health drinks are basically just 60-70% sugar. If you read the packaging, you will see all the vitamins there right from A to Z, but the quantities in it of these vitamins are so minuscule, you would be better off getting nutrition from just eating a simple banana. Yogurt. Don't even get me started on this. Everyone says, oh, it's just dahi, it has calcium, it's fat free, but all that is hogwash, frankly. The only truth is the calorie count. The bottom line is, if something does not fit into your spreadsheet, don't eat it. The beauty of this is that certain products, certain foods will get automatically eliminated because of this filter. You will realize that almost all the eliminations are either sugary foods or highly processed foods. Start thinking of your calories as a daily budget. So let's say I have 1700 calories or 1700 rupees in a day. Do I want to spend 600 of that on a slice of cheesecake? Sure, I can, but then I'll be left with 1100 rupees to get on with the rest of the day, and that may not be enough. So I'm better off spending 600 on a wholesome meal like, say, a fish curry rice than a cheesecake. Again, I'm sure you are thinking, do I stop enjoying life? Do I live according to a spreadsheet? Do I stop having desserts? The answer is no. Feel free to indulge, absolutely. Eat what you crave, but do it once in 15 days, then get back on your quantified plan. It is years of bad eating habits that cause bad health. A few days of indulging in your cravings is not going to do you any harm. Let's come to the last step, which is rebalancing. As your body gets healthier, you become fitter and your BMR and TE changes. So you have to periodically come back and solve the two equations which we saw earlier and remodel your diet plan. Do routine body checkups just to ensure you're on track. So I do these once every 6 months, and it gives me great motivation and comfort, because at one point of time my lipid profile was completely out of whack. Today it's like a textbook report. All the values are smack in the middle of the ideal ranges. Here's an underrated fact: if you have more muscle in your body, your TE is automatically higher. What this means is, if your body fat percentage is lower and you have a lean body, muscles does not mean six packs or bulging biceps. It means you are lean. More muscle means more calorie burn at rest. So the more resistance exercises you do, you will build more muscles. It means a higher TE, which allows you to eat slightly more and yet not gain weight. If you see, so far, we have done nothing but exercise proportion control and eliminated processed food. Do this over a period of time, and I'm certain you will see magic happen. Let's move on to the next part. Now that we have a structure in which we have explored nutrition, let's explore investing in a similar manner. Like carbs, protein, fats, we have three main asset classes here: debt, equity, and gold. Debt gives you stability and capital protection. Sources of debt are bonds, fixed deposits, debt MFs, etc. Equity helps you build capital. Sources are stocks, equity, MFs, etc. Gold helps you have a uncorrelated asset class in your portfolio. Sources are gold, MFs, ETFs, SGBs, etc. Apologies to the crypto enthusiasts in here. It's an asset class I don't understand yet, so it doesn't form part of my plan. Let's move to step two. Like we calculated our BMR and TEE, it is important to calculate our risk profile. You will again find tons of calculators online. Most will talk about your risk profile being related to your age. However, in reality, your risk profile is more related to these factors. Your financial goals, the quantum as well as the horizon is important. So nearer the goal, more debt allocation you will have, and further the goal, more equity allocation you will have. Your emotional quotient, you must enjoy a good night's sleep without wondering what's going to happen to your portfolio when the market opens when you wake up. So happiness is a very, very important factor in investing. Time spent by you analyzing investments. So more time you spend, higher is your risk-taking ability. So this is a quick guide summarizing things. And let's look at what your risk profile means. If your risk profile tends towards aggressive, it means you have a higher equity allocation. The risk profile tends towards conservative, it means you have a higher debt allocation. Just like we did in nutrition, we built a spreadsheet with a particular ratio. We saw those diet plans. We had a keto, low carb, etc. In a very similar manner, we have to look at our debt, equity, gold allocation. Now, external factors as well as your risk profile determines your asset allocation. What I mean here is, you may be a very aggressive investor, but that doesn't mean you pump in a bulk of your money into equity when the markets are at an all-time high. So you also have to look at external factors of the market. We at Multiply have built an asset allocation algorithm which looks at these four aspects: the price to earnings of the Nifty. This tells you whether the market is overvalued or undervalued compared with the earnings. An undervalued market would mean a higher allocation to equity. The market price to book. Price to book is a better proxy rather than P by E for companies, for businesses like banks, NBFCs, etc. We also look at the interest rate differential, which is the E by P, the inverse of P, and the difference between that and the gilt interest rate. What this means is which asset class, whether debt or equity, is giving you a higher return. Momentum, we do have a small weightage towards momentum because in the short run, markets do run on sentiments. Now, based on certain weights on the above variables, we arrive at an asset allocation which is adjusted for your risk profile. So for a moderate risk profile, our current asset allocation stands at 50 debt, 45 equity, and 5 gold. If you are an aggressive profile, you could increase your equity allocation and decrease your debt allocation. Just like we use the spreadsheet to map out individual food items across CP and F, we use a similar approach to map out individual stocks, debt, or gold instruments in our portfolio. Debt and gold are relatively easier asset classes to pick instruments from. For most people, investing in a debt mutual fund and gold mutual fund works best. For equity, there are multiple approaches. Each are varied in complexity. None of them are fully right or fully wrong. But here's a set of general rules that will help you. It will act as a guide to pick stocks. Growth in revenue and EPS. You should look at the PE and PB. A low PE does not necessarily mean that you are buying a undervalued company or a high quality company. Economic moats, these are seen through high and sustained return on capital employed over the years. Medium-sized companies, they have rooms to grow. As they say, you start with acorns and wind up with mighty oak trees. Owner-operator companies preferred. Skin in the game is a very, very underrated concept. You have to ensure that incentives of you as an investor and incentives of the people running the company are aligned. Don't guess what is going to go up or go down. It's very easy to ask someone, should I buy this stock? Is this stock going to go up? But the truth is, nobody really knows the answer to that. Ignore news on stocks. Just keep focusing on the results. If the above is complex to you, you will do just fine sticking to an index fund on an ETF. Consistency and discipline is far more important than stock picking. Stock picking is a subject in itself, which even years can't do justice to it. So talking about it on one slide is of course not justice, but I'm trying to put out the broader idea. Just like we saw in nutrition, we need to come back to periodically rebalance our portfolio. We need to do this regularly, not too often, because as markets move, your composition and weightages will change. So supposing your portfolio moves to 55, 40, and 5 from your intended allocation of 50, 45, and 5, because equity markets have run up, you sell some equity, say 5 of your equity, and move that back to debt. Automatically, you will end up buying low and selling high. You do this for long enough, and you will see that your wealth is compounding. Again, we have done nothing but sticking to a set of rules over a long period of time. In the short run, markets are driven by sentiments. In the long run, markets are driven by earnings. So just continue focus on earnings and let time do its magic. Now let's come to the fun part. We have explored both. So let us see how these two approaches converge. Both of them require you to think long term. So diets are temporary, lifestyle changes are long term. With a diet, say something like a keto, you will see results, but you will get back to your old weight the minute you stop it. Speculating trading is temporary. Asset allocation is long term. We have to be realistic in both. So we grossly, underestimate food calories and grossly overestimate exercise calories. For example, 30 minutes on the treadmill will burn 400 calories, but that slice of cheesecake will cost me 600 calories. So at least I have done this in the past. Just because I have gone to the gym and been on the treadmill for 30 minutes, I think I have the license to have that cheesecake. So I have gone minus 400 and plus 600, which net I have gone to a plus 200 because I underestimated the cheesecake and overestimated the treadmill. Similarly, in investing, we underestimate our behavior and grossly overestimate potential returns. We are all long-term investors, and we call ourselves a long-term investor. And at the next 10% dip, most people are scrambling for an exit. That's what happened in March. We need to focus on what is important. Exercise is important, but eating right is even more important. Timing the market is important, but time in the market is even more important. Short-term doesn't last. Crash diets will give you quick results, but they are not sustainable. Stock tips may give you quick returns, but you can't create wealth through those. You need to have filters. Filters will automatically eliminate junk food. Filters will also automatically eliminate poor investment. We need to accept uncertainty. Nothing in the future is binary. Nobody can say yes or no. So stop asking whether quinoa is healthy or olive oil is healthy. Instead, just ask what is the CPF profile of. Stop asking whether a stock is good, whether a stock is going to go up. Instead, ask why is that stock a good investment? Does it pass your filters? Don't follow anyone blindly. Asking for someone's diet plan is meaningless. You don't know their BMR, you don't know their TE, you don't know their weight loss goals. Everyone has different eating habits and discipline. Stop asking for a list of stocks. You don't know the composition, you don't know the risk appetite or the behavior, time horizon, or financial goals of that person or their list. Start reading more. In case of nutrition, this is reading more nutrition labels. In case of investing, this is balance sheets. If you do not have the inclination to read balance sheets, at least start reading some literature before coming to an investment decision. It's more about what you don't do. Eating right is about avoiding the bad food. Similarly, investing right is about avoiding bad investments. Simplicity is underrated. Simplest foods, which is non-processed foods, the more down you go in the value chain, the foods start getting healthier. Similar is the case with stocks. Invest in products that you understand. Derivatives, structured products, etc. If you don't understand them, just stay away. Compounding is magic. I have covered this earlier. So if you walk, you are only burning calories when you do it. It's like simple interest. But if you do resistance training, you are building muscle, which is leading to higher TE, which is giving you an after effect. that is exactly like compound interest. So compounding is a principle which frankly works in every aspect of it. So thank you guys. That's been my talk. Over to you, Yash.
Thanks a lot. That was amazing. I mean, I was making points myself. I hope our listeners were making points and they've learned too. So, Mihir, thanks a lot again. It was really amazing. I was really wondering, how did you go across all of these things? I know you started early, especially after certain markers in your health went wrong. But tell me, before we get to the questions, how did your investing journey start off?
So my investing journey started off when I began my career at 2005. I was working with Deloitte back then. I had a stipend of 5,000 rupees back then, and I started off with SIPs. My goal that time was, why invest in an SIP? Because finally I had access to an income stream of my own, and I could purchase a cell phone that I wanted. So I was investing 500 rupees in an SIP and keeping 4,500 in the bank, thinking that after 3-4 months, let me, buy a phone with a camera. I realized in hindsight that had I put in that entire 5,000 in an SIP, I would be sitting on a large portion of wealth. So that's how my investing journey began. I've worked in finance all throughout. So as my career progressed, I started to understand these things more. That instead of saving up for material things, it's better to create wealth and have it compound. So you finally reach a stage where the returns on that investment can buy you anything that you want.
You know, I was just thinking about so many finance professionals that I know that have health issues. Be it bankers or be it people in the equity market. How come is it that if they have discipline towards what they do for the sector or they do for their clients, but they don't have discipline towards themselves? And I'm sure a lot of our listeners out here understand this is now key about discipline. Could you tell us more about how you can merge the two psyches? Because I think in financial sector the gains are very obvious, right? And it's imperative, but people forget the health. I mean, health over wealth, for example. People forget that. So maybe from your background, maybe if you could tell us a few things about how you keep that discipline in both the professional side of your end and obviously the investment side of the health side of it too.
Yeah. So on the investing side, it's frankly quite easy. Just ignore the news. Don't keep checking your portfolio multiple times in a day. Uh, just keep investing periodically. On the health side, I think you have to allow yourself some cheat days. If you are very strict about certain things, that oh, I'm not going to have caramel popcorn when I go out for a movie, it's going to come back and bite you. You will end up having 5 tubs of caramel popcorn because you have deprived yourself. So the idea, like I mentioned in my talk also, is have a cheat meal every 15 days and then get back on track. At least for 95 or 99% of the times, follow your discipline and let loose whenever you want to.
Yeah, in long-term perspective, you mean to say buy a Vodafone idea just for a short trade. Sometimes it's okay, rather
Absolutely.
than rather than going
Absolutely.
on only.
I mean, life is also about thrill, right? As
Yeah,
long as you are not betting your house on Vodafone idea, why not?
yeah. Okay, I'll run to the questions now. So the first question is, what diet do you recommend for a person who's just starting in the capital market and obviously in nutrition?
Yeah. So I think a balanced diet would be the easiest to follow. By balanced, I mean something like 25, 35, 40 CPF. Okay. You have to do something that is sustainable, and keto is not sustainable. So people try to follow something like a keto and end up giving it up midway. And let's be real here. Your diet can't be too different from your family. Nobody is going to cook separately for you. That's adding an hour of chores to your day. Okay. So this has to be something which is doable. So a simple meal which is 25, 35, 40 and quantified is good enough to begin with. Remember, it's the calorie deficit that gives you result and not the diet plan per se which gives you result. If this seems difficult, just cutting out processed food and sugar, and I mean cutting out completely, so no biscuits, no ketchup, etc., will help you immensely. On the investing side, again, it has to be balanced. So, like I said, don't bet the house on Vodafone idea. Have a balanced portfolio of debt equity gold. Just begin with any index fund or just begin with any debt fund. Just do an SIP. That's the way to start.
By diet I also mean a lot of people copy someone else's diet,
Yeah.
right? or someone just copies some big investor's portfolio saying, oh, he's bought in this, let me buy that.
Yeah.
What do you recommend for people out here where they want to start, but they want to start by mimicking someone else who's got good results?
Yeah. So see, on the diet side, if you are mimicking what I am eating, firstly, you do not know how much oil I'm adding to it. Okay? You do not know the exact quantity of what I'm consuming. Similarly, on the investing side, you do not know how much percentage of a person's portfolio is concentrated in that stock. You would only hear that Yashraj bought Vodafone Idea or Mihir bought HDFC Bank. You don't know what percentage. So there are multiple biases here. You would give out a list of 10 stocks. Okay? All 10 on 10 will not be right. Maybe 6 on 10 or 7 on 10 will be right. But when I hear that list of 10, how do I know how much money to put into each of these? I'll start using my biases. Out of these 10, let me just invest in 6. And then what I'm going to say, oh, the list that Yashraj gave me doesn't work. So by
Right.
design, copying someone else will not work. But copying a principle of someone else, understanding the core of it, will always work.
Yeah, and that involves research, right? That's what one
Yes.
thing I realize a lot of people don't do. When
Yeah.
they enter the market, they probably try to ape something, or they follow something, or they listen to someone who says buy this. And just like in nutrition, that might give you short-term returns, or probably will just devastate everything else. So,
Uh,
I think that's
you know,
been a big
let
issue for
me
people.
let me give you another example here. Okay, you might see me, having a piece of dessert when we meet. Okay, and you will feel that, oh, Mir is a health freak and he's having dessert, so that means even I can have dessert. What you don't know is I have
Hmm.
skipped 200 calories or say 300 calories in my day to give me
Hmm.
room for that dessert. I will never tell you this because it doesn't come up in a normal conversation. I'm just going to say, oh, this cheesecake is wow. And you are going to carry the impression that, oh, it's okay to eat cheesecake, it's healthy.
Yeah. Plus, you're also going to make amends in your diet later after having it, which I might not make, right?
Yeah.
So that's also one thing in the market, that when you buy something, a lot of people don't know when the person exits, or
Right.
when the person, and what is the person doing to hedge it. I
Right.
think another important topic, maybe we'll cover it in the next part of questions, is how do you hedge things in nutrition, whereas you hedge things in the market. Okay, going further, weight can be gained or lost. Once someone burns their money, they usually never come back. When it comes to weight management, people can come back to trying it. How would you advise someone to gain back something they've lost in the market?
So, I feel setbacks are good to have. I mean, I only dive deep into nutrition after I had the setback of health issues, right? If I didn't have it, I would be, merely unaware of what's going wrong with my health. Okay. So if someone has lost money in the markets, I think the one thing that they shouldn't do is make riskier bets and try to win it back. Okay. You have to realize it is a risky bet that got you there in the first place. So you need to change your approach. You just have to get back to picking an approach, being consistent with it, and being patient with it. It's a behavioral thing. It's very easy to say, but difficult to do. But that's how it is. Markets can't make you rich overnight, but they can certainly make you bankrupt overnight if you take undue risks. So, as Charlie Munger says, tell me where I'll die and I won't go there. So, I won't call a crash in the market, I won't compare it with death, but that's an injury. And if something has caused you an injury, you need to address the root cause. You can't go back there with the same approach. You need to change your approach.
Yeah. Moving on, how do you suggest diversification in health, and what can a person learn from that in the markets? Also, probably, apart from just diversifying, you could also talk about hedging.
Yeah. Okay. So, diversification is extremely important in health. I've been going on about this balanced mix of C, P, and F. Okay. Say you only focus on calories. Like I eat my 1700 calories, and we all know I'm going to lose weight because I have a deficit of 500 there. But I don't eat any P. I just focus on carbs and fat. Okay, I'm going to have 3 cheesecakes in a day, that's 1700 calories, and I will lose weight. But what will happen with that is, since I don't have a protein intake, my weight loss will actually be muscle loss, and
Hmm.
that's bad for my health. So diversification is important here. And on a lighter note, non-diversification in food means I eat the same stuff every day. So
Hmm.
totally bring on the diversification. I don't want to be eating I don't want to be eating the same stuff every day. In markets, there are two schools of thought. There are people who will make concentrated bets where they have conviction, or you could diversify and let time do its magic. The former approach is suitable if you are someone like a George Soros. I mean, if you are an expert who invests for a living, but most of us don't do that. So it's just better to diversify rather than concentrate. And see, in investing, it's about avoiding large losses more than it is about making large returns. And diversification solves for that naturally. Coming to hedging, uh, so in our portfolio we have some allocation towards gold. It's an uncorrelated asset class, so that kind of adds some stability and helps you, hedge your portfolio. In nutrition, there are certain things which you can do. For example, once you are increasing your protein intake, it's imperative that you hedge against the bad effects of that by increasing your water intake. You hedge against a high calorie meal by doing some more exercise. So that's how it would work in nutrition.
What good habits can you inculcate in nutrition and also in the markets? Again, probably related to discipline.
Yeah. So you will see me say this like a broken record, Yash, and frankly, that's the only truth. So the one good habit that everyone should have is just be mindful of what you eat and what you invest. So no junk food or stock tips beyond a particular limit. Continuing on the same example, like Vodafone Idea, yes, for a thrill, I could buy some. That caramel popcorn, yes, for a thrill, I could eat some, but I need to know where to stop. A very good habit is to eat quantified meals, and it helps you in more ways than you can imagine. For example, when your meals are quantified, it means your meals are planned. You know exactly what you are going to eat for the next week, which means you know exactly what you need to shop for in the next week, which means that you have near zero food wastage. Because if you have to eat 200 grams chicken, you have to eat 200 grams chicken. So you are not going to cook 300 grams and waste the 100 on top. Similarly, in investing, if you have a plan, your money gets allocated automatically. So I don't spend on my credit card and then invest the balance. I invest first and then see how much room I have to spend. So automatically things fall into place.
So it's a change. It's a change in mindset overall, actually.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine being in an Indian home that we can calculate, and our entire dining table will have calculated food. You'll typically look around and say, "Come kyun de rahe ho?" Yeah, why are you being so strict, right? How do you do that? Because especially people who live in a slightly larger family or a joint family, it's very difficult to follow all of these things. And secondly, even if I go back to the kitchen and I say I want this kind of food to be made for myself,
Yeah.
and I've tried a couple of times during the lockdown, they're like, but why? It's so difficult to make something else when already there's so many people eating this particular thing, right?
No, so I'll tell you some hacks. So I cook my food myself, but I don't expect other people to do that. So if you have someone who cooks for you, you follow a general rule. If there are 6 people in your house eating, the oil in a particular meal should not exceed 5 teaspoons. So it's X minus
Mm.
1, X people
Mm.
minus 1. Oil should always be put not from the bottle, because then that's approximation. Remember, fat has 9 calories, right? So it's more than the 4 calories of carb and protein. It's very easy to exceed on fat. So if you follow these standardized measurements and you instruct people accordingly, do X minus 1, it's very easy to follow. But if you tell them put 15 ml oil, they are going to say, I'm not going to do all this. It's too much of a task. But 5 teaspoons oil is easy to follow. Secondly, when I said portion control, it didn't mean I ate less. You will be surprised that 60 grams of rice, you will struggle to finish it. Okay. Where we go wrong is excess calories coming in from junk food, or say you add ghee on top of your rice. Okay, you have a pickle on the side, you have a papad on the side. It's those items which you can cut down very easily and get bang for your buck.
Yeah.
So,
And the other way around also, that you take something unhealthy and you add something healthy on it,
yeah,
thinking it'll overall be.
yeah. So there's no food which can negate the bad effects of unhealthy food. That's a myth.
I hope Bhuman Dani is listening to this. He's basically doing his entire startup based on that particular line. That a lot of parents actually, take Maggie and they add vegetables on it just to make it healthier, but it's not really healthy.
So the thing about Maggi is just read the nutrition label. It doesn't matter whether it's a oats noodle or an atta noodle or whatever noodle. So
Yeah,
when
but
I am
How
So
many of us even read the balance sheet before buying, let's say, a trade tip, right? It's actually mentality. It just comes back saying, if you love your money because you work hard for it, you probably, work hard towards spending it too, right? You earn it in the hard way, you spend it in the hard way. But a lot of us who follow stock tips, and I've burned my fingers years ago doing that, would typically just buy something because, hey, Mihir suggested, he must have done it, but they don't know that Mihir also just followed someone else, for example.
and those someone else that I followed might have possibly exit.
Yeah, that also happens.
So, when you're
And
buying something like, say, an iPhone on Amazon, I'm sure you do your research, right?
yeah,
You read reviews on forums, you compare models, and then you decide which one to buy. Unfortunately, we don't do that for food, or we don't do that for investments.
yeah, got it. But so that brings us to another interesting thing. But what are the bad habits that can derail your success, be it in health or be it in investing?
And I think it's common across both. Aiming for short-term success at the cost of derailing your long-term success. So, Vodafone Idea upar jane wala. I'm sorry, I'm just taking the Vodafone Idea example because we started
Yeah.
with it. I don't have a view on it, but hypothetically, uh, you don't bet your house on Vodafone Idea saying ये तो double हो जाएगा. So I'm going to make a lot of money. So you're
Double
looking
हो
at
गया actually. Double हो गया.
yeah. Hey, हो
Most
गया,
of us bought
you are
entry है
lucky.
ना.
In hindsight, it's all good. Right. So in food, this happens through crash diets and quick fixes like supplements. You think that, oh, I'm going to have this protein supplement and I'm going to have biceps like Salman Khan or Hrithik Roshan or anyone for that matter. I give these examples because I'm a 90s kid.
Hmm.
You try to work out more in the hope that, oh, next week I'm going to have six-pack abs. Or you punish yourself too much for having a cheat day by putting in hours at the gym. Right? So these are all short-term fixes which derail your long-term wins. In investing, this is again acting on tips, betting too much on a trend, taking on more risk to recoup losses which you have made earlier.
But these are also like these are also like mistakes people usually make as a rookie, right?
Yeah, and
Is it that you see this happening for a lot of people? Because I think it's acquired learning, but do you think people make such mistakes again in investing often, or is just like an early mistake? What would you advise to such people?
no, I think I have made these mistakes. I mean, we are all humans. We are driven by emotions first and logic later. Right? So it's very tough to detach yourself from emotions and look at logic because see, I'm here saying that I may not invest in Vodafone Idea, but everyone else will feel like ये तो double हो गया. Right? So maybe Mihir is wrong. Right? So you just have to stick to your plan rather than try to move around too much.
What do you think of fads in nutrition investing? For example, kale for one. ESG or ESG as the fad that's come. In the capital markets, or kale the fad in food. You know, uh, Following a certain diet and all. What do you think of these fads? And do you think these fads will ever become trends that will be able to help you pick up sectors better?
So I think again, it comes back to core principles. Let's take your example of kale, and your quinoa, avocado, olive oil all fall in the same bucket. I'll go back to my principle of measuring the CPF of kale. If it fits in my spreadsheet, I'll eat it. And frankly, kale has very limited calories. It's like vegetable. What it has is micronutrients.
Hmm.
So while we have covered the macros, which is CPF, micronutrients are your vitamins and minerals. But you will have to eat a lot of kale to have some benefit from those micronutrients. Okay. So the idea here is you follow a balanced diet, add some kale on top, you are good. You follow a bad diet and add some kale on top, thinking it's going to help you are absolutely wrong. Okay. Same is the case with investing trends. Like let's take the case of Zomato, or the trend of startup IPOs. Okay, so Dipinder Goyal has created wealth over a decade, right?
Yeah.
Because of his consistency and patience. You and I made some money very quickly of the IPO, right? Or double ho gaya, triple ho gaya, whatever. But that's not created wealth for us. Okay? So, like I will eat kale if it fits in my overall balanced portfolio. I would like to have some Zomato holding as a part of my balanced portfolio. I would not like to bet my entire money on this particular trend. And same is the case with ESG or any trend for that matter. So you have to get to the bottom of the trend and evaluate it from your core principle perspective.
Got it. Great. So is it too late for someone to start with their journey in health? I'm sure a lot of people, I'm getting questions about what is TEE, what is CPF. I think you should just explain those things again. A few people joined
Sure.
it late.
Yeah. Yeah.
But is it too late for them to, take this Excel sheet format of yours for nutrition and probably also another format for investing and, start their journey towards success or measured, quantified success?
No, no, absolutely not. So while it's true that the earlier you start, the better off you will be, but it doesn't mean you can't start late. So I started my nutrition journey at 30. I'm 35 today, and I'm very happy to say I'm fit as a fiddle. My BP cholesterol medications have stopped. And frankly, my doctor, who is a relative, was also surprised how I could achieve this, but it just happened with discipline. So if you are starting on your investment journey late, you have that regret today, right? वो पहले चालू किया रहता, I would have compounded so much. Do you still want to have that regret 2 3 years later, or 2 3 years later you want to look back and say, oh, at least I started, I have reached some space? So why create that regret? Start today. It just doesn't matter.
Right. And how does it compound? Because a lot of times, obviously people who are investors are getting more aware of the power of compounding when it comes to creating wealth through equity, but they're not aware of the power of compounding when it comes to taking care of your health and nutrition.
Yeah.
You've been in this journey for a long time. How long is it now?
It's been about 5 6 years now.
Wow, 5 6 years of even focusing so much of health. What is it that you're seeing as the short term achievement, mid-term and long term when it comes to your health? Because that's very difficult for people to see. They just see, oh, if I do this, I'll become leaner.
Yeah.
That's what. But people I'm sure do not see the other parts of what good health brings. Could you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, see, I think the short-term benefits which I had was an immediate weight loss. Okay. I had to change my wardrobe, so that cost me money. So maybe that's not a benefit. But the short-term benefit was just immediate weight loss. The medium-term benefit was my medication stopped. So the minute your body weight comes down, uh, many issues like blood pressure, cholesterol, even thyroid for that matter, start self-correcting. So your body reaches a state of equilibrium, right? So it helped me immensely with all of those issues. In fact, I started having low blood pressure because I was still on my medication. And my doctor said, oh, you need to stop this medication. You're going lower and lower. And the day I stopped it, I was absolutely fine. In investing, you may not see such immediate results. It takes time, especially right now. See, unfortunately, interest in investing only picks up during a bull market. Right? It should be the other way around. If someone invests today saying that, oh, I'm a long-term investor, I have a long horizon, and tomorrow the market crashes 10%, there'll be widespread panic. And the same guy who would call himself or herself a long-term investor will want to exit and say, oh, I'm not putting money in the market ever. So it's important to understand that this is not like that popular meme of Fir Hera Feri, 21 दिन में पैसा double. No. This is like 21 साल में पैसा maybe multiple times. So that mindset is very important.
Right. But when you talk about short term, there is weight loss, mid term, there is you start weaning off medicines. What is the long term? There is decision making clarity, there's clarity of mind. I'm sure all of these things also come in because with health issues, with weight issues and a lot of these things, you are also juggling with a lot of problems that take you away from decision making. Because the other thing apart from discipline, I'm also seeing clarity of decision making that you have to take out here, both the sides, like nutrition or investment.
Yeah. No, it certainly helps you. So firstly, when you eat right, your hormone levels are, very regulated. Okay. So the happy hormones, as you call them, are in, absolute smack in the middle of the ideal range. So in general, you see yourself happier, you see yourself livelier, you see yourself more active. And that starts showing its positive effects in everything around you. As far as decision making is concerned, since my meals are planned, so in the lockdown, I didn't have to think of what to order next from Big Basket or what meal to cook next. It's all planned. So it helps my brain take off a particular decision altogether so I can continue my focus on work. When I'm traveling, again, I don't have to plan to take my medicines and a whole load of stuff that comes with health issues. So, being healthy helps you in all aspects, and we are meant to be healthy, right? It's our bad
Yeah.
habits which have brought on bad health to us. We don't deserve that.
Yeah, I think one of the things you said important was happiness is important, and simple things like a good night's sleep or less stress help you make better decisions in the market. I'm sure in the market, like I remember, uh, I just started trading options and derivatives basically, and I'd made a lot of profit in the first trade. I was so excited that on 31st December, I kind of had I took a put for something and I forgot to square it up the next day because I overslept or something. I don't know what had happened, but it clearly made me lose a lot of money than the profit I made. So I think, having a frame of mind and having something as simple as good night's sleep really, really, really help you make that better decision, especially if you are trading on your own and not an expert that you've, hired to do so. I'm going to take a few questions from the audience. Audience, please see the Q&A box in Zoom and share your questions. I can see a few of them, and I can see some of them that have come to me in direct chat. So I'm going to pick up uh, uh, those questions and take ahead. So, going ahead, Niharika is asking, consistency is the key. How do you stick to the plan every single day? Now, give us a practical approach, right? I mean, not like the bookish approach of saying, be consistent, look at the plan. But I really liked it when you give a practical approach saying, Excel sheet pe measure karo.
Yeah.
Any other of these hacks that you can tell, me or Niharika or anyone else listening and interested?
No, I mean, those are the hacks. There's really not much to it. Just track it on an Excel sheet, and Excel comes naturally to me because of my background in finance. The other hacks are the ones which I already mentioned, like, quantify using stuff in your house. The minute you start measuring on a weighing scale, you are going to feel that, oh, this is not how I want to live my life. But the minute you start doing it, see, I'm going to eat one katori rice and this particular katori, just measure it once in your lifetime and continue with that.
Yeah,
But see, maintaining consistency is tough. You need to get creative with what you are eating. For example, I can make a butter chicken in my calculated macros.
hmm,
All I need to do is just quantify the butter, quantify the tomatoes, quantify the chicken, and quantify, say, onions and other stuff that go into it. So you need to keep treating yourself to the good stuff. Diet is not about just eating salads and soups and extreme low calorie stuff. It is about eating right. As long as you do that, you are happy doing that, consistency will be a natural outcome of it. Same is the case with investing. If you are wanting to make a quick buck, like you said, you bought some put options or sold some put options, right? Feel free to do it because it takes care of a particular itch or craving or thrill that you want to experience. If you do that in a small way, the 99% of your other approach will automatically become consistent.
I hope that answers your question, Niharika. It did answer my question at least, and I took a note of it again. Great. I have an anonymous attendee who's asked me a question. How to how to how do we control emotions when investing and trading? How do we establish an entry and exit strategy?
I mean, that's a tough one to answer. How do you control your emotions? Frankly, I don't have an answer to that. Like I said, we are human beings. We are driven more by behavior. And the only thing that I can think of is something I've already said earlier. Uh, just act as per your emotions for that 1%.
Got it. The next question is by Kunal. How often should one change their diet and portfolios? Any rule of thumb?
There's no rule of thumb really, but like you could do it once in 4 months, once in 6 months. But the idea is to be consistent in that approach. So don't change it this month, then say, oh, next month I'm going to again change it. Then tomorrow the market moves up suddenly, and then you say, oh, I'm going to again change it now. So don't try to time things. Just set a rule and follow it.
Got it. This is another anonymous question. It goes back to what you said about how we estimate our reality in investing and health. Why do we do that? Why do we estimate and see a different reality versus the actual reality? What makes us wrongly estimate our health and our investments?
So I think again it's just emotions. Okay. We want to prove to ourselves that what we are doing is right. Nobody likes to think that, oh, I want to do this, but this is wrong. Like, I want to eat that cheesecake, but we know it is wrong, but we don't want to be certain about it. So we tend to, have that excuse of एक ही तो cheesecake slice है चलता है.
Do you also think it's also about self-doubt? Because someone who's made a loss in the past, or someone who's probably not taking care of their health, a lot of it is self-doubt that goes in saying, I might have taken a decision, but I could be wrong. And you're always in between of taking a stance, right? Because if you have to be clear, you have to be left or right, not like one shade of gray and one shade of black and one shade of white somewhere. So how does one put that mental frame there?
So you are right, Yash. People do have doubts, and those doubts occur when you start changing your approaches. You just have to set an approach and be consistent with it. Again, I'm saying this like a broken record, but once you have an approach, there will be no room for doubt, because you don't have to think about anything. You just need to follow the approach. The doubts will occur when you think whether this approach is right or that approach is right, and you will keep switching between the two.
Yeah. I think, I was talking to a friend who's a trader and also a friend who's a salaried employee. And he was telling me he has been consistently buying the Nifty, as the salaried employee has been saying, I've been doing an SIP into the Nifty. And I think that's a safer bet. Whereas the trader says, hey, look, last month I made so much profit by buying 3 of these stocks. I told you to buy it. And when I was right in between hearing this, I kind of felt, the trader is really right. He's making consistent profit, like 23% in a month sometimes. And then you saw the bad time come in. This was around April 2020. You saw the bad time come in, whereas the guy just who probably got excited by listening to this trader ended up buying, getting a Zerodha account and buying the stocks, and it fell off, right? Whereas the trader said, it's okay, I cut my loss and I moved. He said, what is cutting loss? He didn't understand. Oh, I just bought it. I didn't know they have to cut loss. So what do you tell people who have that kind of a mentality saying, what, let's make money on a monthly basis versus, when you said have a certain strategy and move through it throughout, like people could go wrong in both sides.
Yeah. So people definitely can go wrong on both sides, but going wrong generally happens in a shorter time period. Over time, you will find that most of the times you will be right. You just need to continue with that particular strategy. So, and the same example that you gave, right? Someone who was doing an SIP moved into trading just because he heard a particular person say it. What he didn't know was 100% of the person's thought on the trade.
Yeah.
And people only talk positive. I mean, nobody is going to give you the negative side of themselves. They are only going to give you the positive side of themselves. So that's a selective thing.
Niharika again has a very good question. What's your take on hundreds of experts on both fields who boast of coming through with 100% of their promises, but usually it's all the past glory, and then you realize a lot of still depends on your own behavior and commitment?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are portfolio managers who promise something because of their past record, and then there are health coaches who promise something because of their past record, and eventually they can help you for a certain time, definitely, that weight loss, and you feel good, and at the same time you make that profit. But when you go to do it on your own, it just falls through. What do you talk about? What do you suggest here?
No, so I think when we look at someone who's consistently performing well or consistently giving good advice, I think we are looking at a survivorship bias. We don't look at the people who have not performed.
So you typically, again, what if you have to take a bet on some other expert who is new in the field and then go by it? Because again, I remember meeting Saurabh right after he quit, or he was about to quit from his previous company and started Marcellus. I was never comfortable with PMS investing, because you just looked at the 20% and you realize, oh shit, so much money goes off. And then you just saw the clarity at least Saurabh brought on table, and I felt I invested more on him. And similarly, when it comes to a health coach, I've always gone and figured out my compass and not just the past records. But do you think that works in practical life?
No, it absolutely does. I mean, a good portfolio manager or a good nutritionist or health expert will never promise you results. If something is guaranteed, you can be sure it is not guaranteed. Like, you don't make money in 21 days, you don't lose weight in 21 days. So what's
Mm.
important to see here is the principles which your nutritionist or portfolio manager is following. What's their thought process? How are they approaching the particular topic? Not how much return they have made. And the best of the portfolio managers will agree that the returns have come out of their approach, not out of them knowing what is going to happen beforehand.
An anonymous question again. Market is high. How should we approach the market right now?
So, see, the market is high, which is why our multiple asset allocation algorithm stands at 45% equity. So, if you are entering the market at this point of time, your allocation should be in that ratio of around 50, 45, and 5. But please be aware that entering the market at this phase will give a has a very high likelihood of a correction in the near months. So don't look at it from this point of view that, oh, I put in money today and 3 months, 6 months later there's a correction. So equity markets are not working out for me. Look at your portfolio years later, not days or months.
Yeah, but what if people have been convinced that the India growth story is there and they want to buy into an HDFC bank because obviously it's going to improve, it's going to have more wider reach and more number of customers. What do they do now? Because a lot of times I've seen people will say, okay, markets must be high, but the stock is very good, right? That's one approach. I mean, a lot of people on edge also, right, saying, hey, whatever the market, just buy great companies.
So I think you have to buy great companies, but at a fair price. And firstly, what is a fair price? You can only guesstimate. Nobody really knows whether today is fair or the price 6 months earlier was fair or the price in the future is going to be. So that's one. Secondly, you always have to allocate because you can't be right 100% of the times. So a very simple thing that you can do is just start investing in these great companies, let's say HDFC Bank, on a regular monthly basis. As simple as that. It's pure allocation, consistency, and discipline. There's no other answer to this.
Is Zomato a high calorie investment?
I don't know about the investment, but I do order from Zomato on my cheat days. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people order from, I mean, at least I've seen the trend for me at least. I'm happy with Swiggy and I'm really excited to see Swiggy list. I think it's quick, it's done few things right than doing everything. But yeah, the trend of people using these apps to order home or in their office. I remember talking to this roll wala in Lower Parel who makes kathi rolls that uh, he said that there's a guy opposite, right opposite where my roll stand is, and he calls for it through Zomato, and Zomato loses money giving him the roll. He could just walk down and I could walk a few steps and give it to him, but he still calls for it because Zomato discounts it and then Zomato delivers it. I don't know if that's healthy when it comes to the balance sheet, and where marketing and the deep discounts that they give are really going to be sustainable. But it's really good for customers by the end of it, right?
No, no, this person you are talking about surely has a value investor mindset.
Yeah, but let's see. I mean, I'm very optimistic for Zomato from the startup environment, not clearly from the balance sheet bit. But talking about Zomato, I think one thing that we can pick up from nutrition is the fact that nutrition and quantify itself as a trend exists, right? And there are a few companies that will go there. I think one of our Edge members runs a company called Goki. I'm sure it'll list someday, but that's going to be a part of this quantified self, or this new age thesis that people want to be healthier, they want to be better, and such stocks and such companies and such startups will keep doing better. What do you think on that space?
No, no, absolutely. There's increased awareness. So there's a lot of information online. I mean, 10 years ago, even if you wanted information on nutrition, you would have to read some book. And who gets knowledge from reading a book on a topic like this, right? Today, you have a lot of content online, lot of awareness. So surely any company that helps you make your life easier with respect to nutrition will surely do well, according to me.
Okay, and any such options that you're tracking in India or US?
No, not really. But if I were to break my own rules and make a concentrated bet, that would certainly be an investment in a startup called Fitter, which
Hmm.
has. So I have learned everything that I have from Fitter, and they have a very simple approach. No promises. Yet you see thousands or lakhs of people seeing results with them.
Yeah. I've heard of something similar for another company called SoFit. But I think Fitter is good. Please introduce me to JC. I would love to see if he can invest as Edge, and not just have a session on nutrition and capital market, but somewhere imbibe it together. Okay. Rohan asked, what books that you are reading nowadays, and what are your recommendations for best books related to investment?
I recently read Psychology of Money like everyone else. I have been reading Joys of Compounding by Gautam Beth. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. I call it leverage reading because what Gautam has done is taken a ton of knowledge from a lot of books and just compiled it into one book. So reading that one book will give you a lot of insight. It's more bang for your time. I have also read this book called 100 Baggers by Christopher Mayer, which will help to create some stock filters. And it's a very small book. It's only 200 pages. You can possibly finish it over the weekend. And of course, The Intelligent Investor, which I make an attempt to read once a year. I think it's a timeless piece of text. Whatever was written 70 years ago, most of it, maybe with some modifications, still holds true today.
Wow, great. So I'm going to request you for something. A lot of people have asked for your PPT. So
Yeah.
I've just asked my team that when we upload this video on YouTube, we want to make sure there's a link to your PPT. But for Edge members who are on the Edge group, if you could share it with them right after this session, it would be great. And
No,
also a few
absolutely.
thoughts.
Yeah, and I'm part of the Edge group. So if anyone wants anything, please feel free to reach out to me absolutely anytime. These two are topics which I'm highly passionate about. So I enjoy talking about these. So happy to help anytime.
So before we end this session, I want to ask you two questions
Yeah.
pertaining to yourself and what you're doing. Tell me more about Multiply, and tell me, what is it about formal education that taught you what you are doing today? These are
Okay.
two things. I have a feeling you'll have an interesting answer.
Yeah. So let me talk about the education part first. Okay. So I think my network is the absolute number one thing that my university has given me. So what I learned at university, which is slides, books, etc., I think that's just required because we need to pass an exam to get the degree, right? But this was something. I mean, we all study dated stuff, right? What we study today will not be relevant 10 years later. And this is a cliche that you need to learn how to learn and what to learn. Right? And I think that's what university has taught me. The ability to adapt and learn new things is more important than the thing itself.
Hmm.
So, and there's no substitute for practical learning. So you could have read tons of books on nutrition, but it's only when I was put into the fire that I realized that, I will have to pull up my socks and really be serious about the topic. So university teaches you to do that. It doesn't give you knowledge as such. It does set you up with better prospects and a higher probability of achieving what you want to achieve. And I feel very fortunate to be part of a community of brilliant people thanks to Oxford. So the network is available to brainstorm ideas, just support with connects, or just take a break and just chill. And that's what community is all about, right? So drawing on the same thought of community, we are building Multiply, which is a social network for investors. Now, what this means is on Multiply, you will be able to follow real portfolios of experts and friends. You will be able to see their portfolios in a percentage format. So I don't have to guess, oh, Yashraj is buying HDFC, I should also buy it over a WhatsApp message or a phone call. I'll actually be able to see what percentage of your portfolio, say, HDFC Bank comprises of. I won't have to bother and call you all the time. Oh, are you selling? You mentioned this point earlier. Someone tells you to buy something, you never know when they sold. So
Yeah,
Multiply
yeah.
will solve for all of that. Most importantly, you will be able to see the asset allocations of the entire community for you to be able to learn from. This is not a platform where you would share buy this, sell this, stop loss this, trigger this, etc. We are focusing on creating long-term wealth, which comes through asset allocation. You have a place for getting your views out to the community, learning from what they have to say on that. You will be able to know who exactly in your network to reach out to for a particular stock. So we say our biggest success would be when our users don't ask, why did you buy this particular, don't ask which stock should I buy. they should ideally be asking, why did you buy this particular stock? What's your thought process behind it? And they should be able to learn from it. So we are launching a private beta soon, and our wait list is up at multiply.co. So please do sign up.
Thanks a lot. There was a lot of learning on a Sunday morning. It's there are these few days when you feel that you've learned something new that will help you directly, and you learned it not the indirect way of going and making a mistake, but you learned it from someone else who's made mistakes, changes, and obviously then succeeded. I think this was that day for me, and I'm sure a lot of us who attended. I think over 97 people attended, at its peak right now. But a lot of us who attended today would basically have learned so much more today about health, nutrition, how to keep that discipline when it comes to nutrition and investing, how to understand things don't just work in the short term. There's a medium and long term effect, which is much more rewarding if you're consistent. And obviously, a lot of things that basically will help. And even if it helps 5 people out here make a better decision for their health or for their wealth, I think we've achieved what we wanted to. And I think the summary that I want to put across, or the one line that I think that really is formed in my mind is invest in yourself before you invest in any other stock. Invest in improving your health before you invest in improving your wealth. I hope that leaves us with some more thoughts for this Sunday, and I hope we make corrective measures for our health and for our wealth. Thank you, Mihir. Thanks a lot for joining in, and thank you all the Edge attendees and others who have joined in today. I hope to see you again for such sessions.
Thank you so much, Yash. It's been my pleasure.